Thank you guys for showing up nice and early. Great to see everyone out here. Really happy to be here, and thanks to Casual Connect for allowing me to speak. I'm here to talk about something that is in many ways a personal story. I joined Scopely about 3 years ago, and in 2012, the world of publishing looked a lot different than it does today. And what we're going to talk about is how the game has changed and what that means for the mobile developer-publisher relationship moving forward. So let's take a quick look back at mobile publishing in 2012. It seemed like everyone was doing it. You had companies like Zynga signing 40 some odd developers. You had folks like Unity and Amazon and Facebook on the platform side opening up their doors to developers, thinking that they might want to get into that game. And then, of course, you had many of the Eastern companies like GRE and DeNA coming over to the West and signing publishers right and left. And it was a pretty exciting time for an independent developer. Chillingo was releasing 2 games every week, it seemed. Rovio was opening their publishing doors. Kabam, who was a pretty sexy developer at the time, was starting to publish games. But pretty quickly, a lot of these companies started to drop away. And it was pretty startling to see how that happened. And, one by one, they shut their doors, they stopped publishing quite as many games, and they really weren't that many publishers left standing. And this kind of came to a head in 2015 when Kabam announced that they were shutting down their third-party publishing. So one of the most interesting Western developers who had opened their doors to third parties to start publishing their products decided to stop doing it. But not only that, in a statement that was published by VentureBeat, they said they're going to make more revenue on less games. Pretty interesting. So they weren't just deciding not to publish games because they didn't really feel like doing it. It was a better business move for them to publish 3 to 4 games a year than 12 to 15. So let's take a look back at publishing in 2012 and the things that were really important about it. What did developers look at? They looked for marketing money. They looked for Apple featuring. They looked for development costs, often in the form of an MG. And that was about it. When I joined Scopely, whenever I would talk to a developer, it was, how much money are you going to give me? Where are you going to spend that money? And that was really the only thing they cared about. And interestingly, the other part of the question that they were asking was, do I really need a publisher? Do I need a publisher to help me? Because isn't this the reason why I'm in mobile? Didn't I join this whole growing ecosystem because I could sign into iTunes Connect and publish my own game on my own? Now, flash forward 3 years, publishing in 2015. What are developers looking for when they're talking to me and folks like me at various publishing houses? Well, of course, marketing dollars is definitely a key theme. Apple featuring, still there. You have product management, which is something kind of new. You're seeing a trend where independent developers are looking at companies like Scopely and saying, hey, you guys do some interesting work. Maybe you could help me do better work and design more interesting and more sustainable games. IP licensing was something that continues to come up. A lot of developers have games that they're interested in attaching maybe a Hollywood IP or an interesting piece of intellectual property. Production efficiencies. This is something I'm hearing more and more often, that folks think that if they work with a publisher, they can move quicker and get games into market in a better way. You've got business intelligence. This is becoming increasingly important in the world of free-to-play games as a service. You definitely have a lack of knowledge, I think, on the developer side that many publishers have, so folks are tapping into that through analytics and the different BI teams that publishers have in-house. Sophisticated UA. Not just how much money are you going to spend, but can you get the right users into my game? And kind of as an offshoot of that, 360-degree product marketing, TV, offline, influencers, distribution in Asia, localization, QA. I mean, the list starts to go on and on and on. And this is something that in only 3 years' time, developers are starting to see that, hey, it's not just how much money you're going to give me and where you're going to spend it, but it's how can you get my game into market, how can we make a splash, and how are you going to be able to make that happen for me? And the conversation has changed. It's turned into, do I really need a publisher? To, I really need a publisher. I'll caveat that by saying I really need a publisher if I want to be a top 50 grossing game. I think there's certainly the possibility for developers to go out there and release games and for small companies to run profitable businesses. But if you're looking to crack the top of the charts, if you're looking to really be a category leader, it's incredibly difficult. And I would challenge anyone in the audience to point to the independent developer who's really doing that in a sustainable way. So taking a step back, just want to tell you a little bit about Scopely, why I'm up here, what we're doing. I'm the VP of Business Development at Scopely. I've been there for 3 years. I joined the company when we were about 20 people. We're now about 145 people based in Los Angeles. We've released some successful games recently, 6 number ones in a row. You might know us from our most recent release, which is The Walking Dead: Road to Survival. We did over 4 million downloads in the first week. It was the fastest growing mid-core game to the top of the charts this year. And it was our 6th consecutive number one and currently sits inside the top 50 grossing. We also are known for Yahtzee with Buddies. Yahtzee is actually inside the top 30 grossing, doing quite well for us right now. The creator is sitting out here in the audience and will be speaking tomorrow and is really a flagship product for our company, something we're very, very proud of. And here's how we talk about what we do at Scopely. And this is not what we were saying 3 years ago. 3 years ago, it was a totally different conversation. But today, and this slide is pulled right from a deck that we show to developers, investors, folks internally and externally, we talk about all these functions. We talk about product management, live operations. In fact, that's the tip of our spear. We talk about product marketing and a 360-degree marketing approach that is not just advertising on ad networks, but is actually going offline to TV, working with influencers, working on various social networks. We talk about analytics and player insights, the real-time analytics that we built out and that we've spent years developing in-house that's proprietary to Scopely. Product localization, QA, ad monetization, business development, distribution. These are all the things that developers are coming to us for and that we're selling ourselves on to developers. And if you look at some of the details of what this stuff means, what we've actually built from a technical perspective, this isn't trivial. This isn't stuff that anyone can just go out with a team of 3 guys and build. This takes 100 people. This takes millions of dollars, years of time to build things like a big data analytics platform, a player warehouse, performance prediction models. Not only are those models difficult to build, but to tune and to really understand what you need to be predicting, that's incredibly challenging. And just a quick look at the world of marketing, because I think that's something that continues to be very important to developers. This is what I mean by a 360-degree approach. We're talking about the life cycle of a player in the game. We're talking about getting them in there, keeping them engaged, and then re-engaging them. We're talking about advertising to them in various angles, from CPI, CPM. We're talking about making sure that we are putting out a brand, building a brand that people know, love, and care about and want to come back to. And that's really what it is. We're talking about the life cycle of a game. Whereas 2012, developers were concerned about, how are you going to launch my game? How much money are you going to spend? Can I be number one? Now they're worried about, what am I going to be doing in 12 months? What's the top grossing charts going to look like? What are they going to look like in 18 months? Is this game going to be sustainable? Am I just going to sign a deal with you guys and you're going to move on to something else? Or am I going to actually be able to build a business? And what does that life cycle look like? Because the reality is, no one needs another mobile game. No one. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to go to the video store, Blockbuster, or maybe even before that, it was an independent video store with my brother just about every single weekend. And we would stand there renting a video game for like $4.99, sitting there, and we would debate on the back of the box, what's the game we're going to play? What is it going to be? Is it going to be this one? Is it going to be that one? This artwork looks cool. I heard my friend said that one was cool. And we'd bring it home, and that was the game we'd be stuck with for the weekend. That was it. That was our game. Well, today, I think I downloaded 7 mobile games waiting for, to get up on stage here, because there are so many games coming to market, and there are so many opportunities to take away your attention that no one needs another one. People have invested years of their lives, thousands of dollars, built communities around the games they care most about. So if you're going to try to put out a new game, you need to give them a reason to move over from one game to another. So let's take a look back at from the publishing side, how we evaluated developers in 2012 and what that looked like. So there are a couple things, and it kind of corresponds to what developers were looking for. We looked at development costs. How much is this game going to cost us? We looked at speed to market. How quickly can we get it out? Because quite frankly, in 2012, when I joined Scopely, we were thinking we were going to be putting out potentially dozens of games a year. We were looking at the tech and the engine. And we had specific requirements a lot of the time. If they weren't building in Unity, it was going to be really challenging for us because we were set up in such a way where we really wanted to be working with developers in a specific engine. And then previous development experience. Really we were platform genre agnostic. We could have a developer who'd ship 5 strategy titles that come to us with a puzzle game, and hey, you guys have shipped games? Okay, you know how to get something out there. And really the underlying themes were execution and efficiency, because it was about getting games into market. Because the traditional thinking in game development, in game publishing, was you make money by putting games out there, because that's what happened. Put a game on the shelf, put some nice artwork on it, people buy it, you made money. Well, in today's world, you make money by engaging people. You make money by keeping them in your game. You don't make money by releasing a game. In fact, you oftentimes lose money. So now, flash forward to 2015. What does it look like? What are the things that we are actually evaluating and looking at in 2015, and how do we think about the world of independent developers? Mobile genre expertise. I cannot emphasize this enough. We want folks who understand the platform. We want folks who understand specific game mechanics and specific genres. Technical prowess. This is something that is a little bit different than what I was talking about before. Before there were technical requirements. Now it's about how strong is your engineering team. Quite frankly, we don't care if a developer is working in Unity, they're working in Corona, they're working in their own proprietary tech. It doesn't matter to us. What matters to us is, can they scale a back end? Do they have reusable tech that they understand? And how quick and efficient are they? Product thinking. Free-to-play systems design, live ops, etc. I cannot emphasize this enough either. How are you going to design a game that people are going to stick with for a long period of time? It's not because it's pretty. It's not because it's fun, as weird as that sounds. It's because there's an incredible metagame and there's depth to it. Experience with IP. A lot of times, we're looking at working with developers who have licensed IP that we've brought to them. We want to make sure that these guys know how to handle that IP. And even if it's original IP, we want to understand that they have the ability to build a brand. A willingness to collaborate. Back 3 years ago, if a team was sort of maybe difficult to work with, but they were really interesting and exciting, we'd probably take the leap on them. Today, no chance. Publishers are getting more and more hands-on because they're bringing institutional knowledge, and if the developer partner is not willing to at least listen and collaborate and work through that, it's a very challenging relationship. Production processes. An understanding of how to ship a game and how to be transparent about that so that we understand where the game is at every stage through that production lifecycle. Operational alignment. One thing that we can't have is a developer going out and trying to sign a deal with us and then going and signing 4 other deals with publishers, going and selling their company. Because if they do, that causes a lot of challenges and a lot of problems on our end for us trying to keep them focused on the project at hand. Team size and the ability to scale. 3 years ago, we were signing deals with 2-man teams, right and left. Because quite frankly, we looked at the market and we said, hey, a couple guys can put out amazing games. And really they can. But a couple guys cannot scale a game. That's become increasingly clear. When you look at the top of the charts, you're competing against the Machine Zones of the world, the Elexes of the world. They've got hundreds of people literally working on single titles. And if you're 3 people, you might be able to create a great kernel of a game, but there's no chance you're going to be able to scale that game. Leadership. What does the leadership look like? How do they see the future of their company? And are they the type of people we want to bet on? And then the potential for a long-term relationship. It takes a lot of overhead to spin up one of these partnerships, and if there's not the potential, or maybe even a guarantee that we're going to be working with this company for a long period of time, it just doesn't make sense to go through all that pain. So, evaluating developers in 2015, what's no longer as important? Not surprisingly, development costs. When you're looking at a game that could potentially make $5 million a month and then some, if a game costs $2 million to make or $2.5 million to make, it's an important consideration, but it's not going to kill you at the end of the day. And it shouldn't be the deciding factors, and I don't think it is for most publishers right now. Speed to market. We want games to move efficiently. We want to make sure that they're coming out there, but it's not really all that important if we get it out as quickly as possible. It's important that we ship the right game. And specific tech requirements. As I said, we're looking for technical prowess. We're not necessarily looking for specific technical requirements. And as you can see, the underlying themes here are user experience, product focus, and operational alignment. It's a lot different than what we were looking for in 2012. So now, to illustrate some of what I'm talking about, I'd like to walk you guys through a few of our most recent partnerships. These are deals that we've done over the past 8 to 10 months, and they're all partners that are in our portfolio, some of which we've announced, some of which we haven't, but I'll give you guys some insights into them right now. So the first one I'd like to talk about, we announced, I believe, back in February. It's with a company in Los Angeles called Kung Fu Factory. Kung Fu Factory is a really interesting team. We've got a great track record of shipping console to mobile games, working on big IPs, and everything they've done is extremely polished. They actually won an Apple's Best Of for 2 of their titles last year, for Adventure Time Card Wars and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Rooftop Run. Both really fantastic games, but interestingly, both paid games. So a challenge, looking at this team, hey, these games are fun, these games are great, but do these guys get free to play? So why did we choose Kung Fu Factory? Well, there were a couple of key reasons here, and they correspond to some of the things we were looking at and some of the things that we look at when we're evaluating developers as a whole. First, excellent creative direction. These guys had great leadership, they have a great creative director, and they have folks in-house who understand how to ship products that people just want to touch. Experience with IP. we were talking to Kung Fu Factory about multiple IP-driven products, and the fact that they had worked on brands like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Adventure Time Card Wars, these were very important factors for us because they know how to ship a licensed product. Multi-game relationship and studio focus. Now, when we announced this deal, I believe VentureBeat also published an article about this one as well back in February. When we announced this deal, it was a multi-game deal, and that was really key to this. And it was the first of its kind. And if you asked me 6 months prior to doing this deal, would we ever do a multi-game deal with a partner that we'd never really worked with before, I would have said, you're crazy, no way, no chance. But what we saw as the market changed was that we needed to make sure that we were going to have operational alignment with our partners. And one way of doing that was to get in bed with these guys in a much more intense way, signing up for multiple games from the outset. Trajectory of the team and the recent learnings. Despite the fact that they'd been making paid games, they were learning about free-to-play with every single time they went at it, and they had a couple games in development that were free-to-play using some pretty interesting mechanics. And in these games, they had some reusable tech. So this was tech that they were already developing that we could work on with them to enhance, optimize, and bring to market in new and exciting ways. Now, despite some of the knocks on free-to-play, one other thing that concerned us about these guys was that they didn't have the most focused approach. They jumped around from genre to genre, and I mentioned before how important it is to us that we had genre expertise and genre focus. But what was interesting about these guys were that they were willing to change their approach. They were willing to focus on certain mechanics, certain audiences, and work with us to really create that kind of focus that we were looking for in our developer partners. So moving on to another developer that we've recently partnered with. This was a very different deal with a company called Digit, based in Dublin, Ireland. Exciting company, probably best known for a game that Kabam published. It was the last third-party publishing title that Kabam signed, Kings of the Realm. We identified them when Kabam shut down their third-party publishing platform, and it was a game that a lot of folks at Scopely were actually playing and really, really excited about. So when we had the chance to talk to these guys, it was pretty cool. So why did we choose Digit? Genre expertise. These are MMO experts. These are guys who've only made strategy games their whole career, going all the way back to browser MMOs like RuneScape. Their CTO is from Big Point. These were guys who lived and breathed strategy. Studio focus. Not only were they making games in a genre, but they were focused on big products, big teams against that, and making sure that everybody was aligned internally. Best-in-class engine and tech. Their engineering was great, but they also had an engine in Kings of the Realm, which, while the game wasn't doing incredibly well, it was a very, very strong piece of technology, and the systems that they had in that game were definitely reusable and things that we will be reusing in future games. Leadership and core team. When you sit down with the CEO of Digit, Richard, he's a guy that you just want to be with. He's a guy that you want to learn from. He's a guy that you want to partner with, and that was something that was very clear to us. The investment component. This was something that made this deal a little bit unique to anything we'd done in the past. We actually invested a nice chunk of change into these guys in order to allow them and enable them to do the work that we wanted them to do. And again, like the multi-game deal with Kung Fu Factory, this tied us to them in a much more deep way from the outset. And despite having not the biggest team, there were about 20 guys when we signed the deal, due to the leadership, due to the location in Ireland, these guys had the ability to scale very, very quickly. And that's something that they're doing. I think they're up to about 35 people right now. They're working on one big title, 100% focused on that one. And they're going to be, after they start getting that going a little bit more and scale a little bit, they're going to be moving on to their next, a 2-game publishing deal. So finally, I want to talk about our most recent partner, which we have not announced yet, but is a deal that I'm really excited about. We just signed it a couple weeks ago. It's with a company called Acuras. And Acuras, again, sort of resembles a Kung Fu Factory type of approach. These are guys who come out of a work-for-hire world. They've done a lot of work for Cartoon Network. They worked with a company called Rumble Entertainment. And really, they've put out games with just incredible user experience. Most recently, you might have seen their game, which got Editor's Choice, Horizon Chase, a really fun, retro racing game. But again, not a ton of free-to-play expertise. But what did they have, and why did we choose them? Okay, so these guys had that AAA user experience that we've been talking about. They had excellent engineering, which is really, really important. Now, this is something a little different and something a little new. They had a core team that had been working together for 8 years. The way that these guys communicate is like a family. The way that they understand each other and the way that they operate is so efficient that it made working with these guys a lot easier than on other partners who were hiring new folks. I mean, they had their systems in place. And when we went down to Porto Alegre, Brazil to visit them, they opened up everything. They were super transparent about how they operated, what they did, and what they were going to do. Potential for long-term relationship. There's some triggers in the deal that enable us to invest in the company. Studio focus and team size, 45 people. And they were willing to dedicate 100% of that staff to our game. And despite a lack of free-to-play expertise, these guys had a willingness to collaborate and learn. In fact, we put a product manager down there full-time who was a Scopely employee on the ground in Porto Alegre because these guys were so excited to learn from us. So those are some of the recent deals we've done, and I think they illustrate a little bit how the world of publishing has changed and how different it is from 2012. And I was trying to figure out a way to close out my talk today, and I was up late last night, and I was reading the news, and there was a really startling, in some ways, exciting in others, and sort of odd quote that I noticed in GameIndustry.biz. And Gabe Layden, CEO of Machine Zone, a company notorious for working on one gigantic project and having a huge staff of people supporting it, said that people in 2017 will look back and say we had it easy. And I just want to read you this quote because I think it's so striking. It may look weird, but you can hear everybody's statements about what they're doing. They're collapsing the number of games they're making. We certainly are. Right now they're saying, oh, we're only going to make 4 or 5 a year. We say we're going to make 4. But I would guess that in 2 years, they're all going to be making 1. 2017 will be, on the distribution side, probably 3 to 5 times harder than it is now. People complain about how difficult it is today, and people in 2017 will look back and say, we had it easy. And that's interesting because I think if we look back 2 years, we would say the same thing about 2013. And I think maybe in 2019, we might be saying the same thing then. So it's an incredibly dynamic world that we're in. It's incredibly exciting. I think we're all really blessed to be a part of it because there's so much happening right now. And who knows what's going to happen a couple years down the road. But I think it's going to be an exciting ride no matter what.
Thank you very much. Very, very insightful presentation. We want to take a couple of questions. Just one quick question for you.
Yeah,
it looks like you're taking a very global approach in choosing your partners. Is that on purpose or is that by chance? And as follow-up, are you looking at Israel as another potential place for partnership?
We are location agnostic. So for us, we're very focused on putting out games from the best developers in the world. I'm really proud to be part of a company that is talent-focused and really wants to foster amazing relationships with the best developers. So it doesn't matter if they're in Brazil, Ireland, England, US, whatever. We just want to find the best talent, the right guys for the job.
Great. Any questions from the audience? Any hands? One other quick question for myself would be, do you see any trends in genres for 2016? Is there something that you're specifically looking for you think will bubble to the top?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I necessarily see a trend in genres other than I think more and more developers are heading down the path of focusing on a specific type of genre or a specific demographic. So I think you're seeing less of the developer who says, oh, I want to go make a runner, and next game I'm going to go make a strategy title, and next game I'm going to go make a puzzle title. I think everyone sort of sees that in order to compete, you really need to understand, the mechanics of a specific genre very, very deeply.
Great. Okay. One question in the audience over here.
At what stage are you starting to evaluate developers? Are there some KPIs for the game required, or?
Yeah, no, not at all. In fact, we oftentimes look more at the team than at the actual product. We're getting involved typically earlier and earlier in the process. I think it allows us to do our job better. There's a lot of things that we bring to the table, which if we're coming in when a game is testing, not that we don't do that and we haven't done that, we have. It's just a lot more challenging to really affect change within the game and bring our tools, tech, and expertise to the table. So we do like seeing things as early as possible. A lot of times we've talked to developers about a concept for years before moving forward with something. And a lot of times we've seen something in market that we are just really excited about and then either worked on that game or the next game, the subsequent game with the developer.